All right, so you're thinking about earning six figures, working remotely, right? I mean, who isn't these days?
Yeah, it's a huge question,
It is.
and it's on a lot of people's minds, and we're going to get into it today.
Yeah, today we're diving deep into some insights from blogwidow.com.
Absolutely.
They've got some really interesting stuff to say on this very topic.
Yeah, they really do address the potential for solid earnings outside the traditional office, which is,
Yeah,
I think, what a lot of people are looking for.
for sure. And to
Mhm.
set the stage for this conversation, right?
Right.
It's important to think about how much the world of work has changed. Like if we go back even just a few years, Global Workplace Analytics reported that the remote workforce grew like crazy, over 159% between 2005 and 2019.
Wow.
So that was already a massive shift. And then the
Yeah.
pandemic hit and poured gasoline on that whole trend.
Absolutely accelerated everything.
Right. So considering all of that, how realistic is this six-figure remote income goal today?
Well, and I think what's really fascinating here is that, this shift to remote work,
Yeah.
it's not just a pandemic blip like people thought it might be.
Right.
It's really kind of a fundamental change in how companies are thinking about work.
For sure.
And I think that opens up a ton of possibilities for people who want to use their skills remotely
Yeah.
and really command these higher salaries.
Absolutely. So our mission in this deep dive is to break down what blogwidow.com has to say about this whole idea of making six figures remotely.
Yeah.
We're going to look at those industries where the opportunities are and the strategies to actually make it happen.
For sure.
So let's just cut to the chase, right?
Yeah.
Can you actually make six figures working remotely?
Well, blogwidow.com is very clear on this one. The answer is yes.
Okay.
It's not some kind of, pipe dream. It's a reality for more and more people.
Yeah.
But it's important to understand that just working from home doesn't magically make you a six-figure earner. It
Yeah.
usually takes, some effort, some planning, and in-demand skills.
Okay, so let's drill down a little bit. Blogwidow.com points to certain industries as the sweet spots for these high remote earnings.
Yeah.
Where should we be looking?
Well, unsurprisingly, tech and software development are really leading the pack here.
Makes sense.
Think about roles like software developers who are working in really in-demand languages, data scientists who can pull insights out of, mountains of data, cybersecurity specialists, cloud engineers.
Yeah, those are hot.
Yeah, absolutely. Even machine learning experts, building the next generation of AI.
Right, and we all know those roles are in high demand.
Yeah.
Blogwidow.com even mentions senior software engineers at the big names, Google, Microsoft,
Yeah.
potentially making well over 100 grand.
Right.
Often with the flexibility to work remotely.
Yeah.
So what is it about these roles, particularly in remote work, that drives those high salaries?
Well, I think you have to look at the bigger picture. The whole economy is becoming more and more reliant on technology. Businesses are going through digital transformation, so there's this huge demand for these tech skills. And
Yeah.
what's really interesting for remote work is that companies aren't limited by location anymore. So
Right.
you have this global competition for talent,
Makes sense.
which just drives salaries up even more. And we're seeing a particularly intense demand, in certain niche areas like serverless architecture on AWS or Azure, people who have really deep expertise in languages like Rust for high performance computing. These are areas where you can collaborate remotely effectively,
Yeah.
but there just aren't enough people who can do it.
Right. So it's a global talent hunt for specific skills.
Absolutely.
Okay. So beyond tech, what else does blogwidow.com highlight? I remember they talked about digital marketing and e-commerce.
Yeah, that's another big one.
Yeah.
As more and more businesses move online, the value of a skilled digital marketer just skyrockets. Think
Mhm.
about SEO specialists, content marketers,
Right.
social media strategists, e-commerce managers. These roles directly affect a company's bottom line.
Yeah, they bring in the money.
Exactly. And in a remote setting, you can have a global reach.
Right. And blogwidow.com uses the example of a digital marketing director at a big e-commerce company potentially earning six figures while running campaigns remotely.
Yeah.
So it's that direct link to revenue that makes these roles so valuable regardless of location.
Exactly. When you can show how your work is driving traffic and sales, boosting engagement, companies are willing to pay top dollar for that expertise. And,
Makes sense.
even within those fields, there are certain areas that are just blowing up. Cybersecurity is a great example. Roles focused on cloud security or threat intelligence, those are often remote.
Yeah.
And they come with big salaries because protecting data is so crucial.
Right. You're protecting those digital assets.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got tech, We've got digital marketing.
Hmm.
What about consulting and coaching? I remember blogwidow.com mentioned that as a potential area for high remote earnings.
Yeah, this is a really interesting one because it's so broad.
Yeah.
The need for expertise and guidance, it exists in so many different fields.
Right.
Business, finance, health, wellness, you name it. And the beauty of remote work for consultants and coaches is that you can reach clients anywhere.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
Online coaching has really taken off.
it has. Yeah.
Career coaching, life coaching, business mentoring, it's all happening online.
They gave the example of a business consultant advising startups remotely, which makes sense. Someone with that experience can command high fees, and they can work with anyone, anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Your knowledge, your ability to provide insights,
Right.
that's what matters, and you can deliver that value just as effectively virtually.
Right. It's all about your intellectual capital.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered tech, digital marketing, consulting. What about finance and investment? Blogwidow.com mentions that as well.
Yeah, and this one might surprise some people because finance has traditionally been seen as a very office-based industry, but we're seeing a real shift towards remote work in roles like financial analysis, accounting, tax advising, even investment consulting.
Yeah.
The technology for secure communication and digital platforms has come a long way,
It really has.
which makes remote financial services much more viable.
And they gave the example of a financial advisor working with wealthy clients remotely,
Yeah.
which really highlights that change.
Mhm.
It's about trust and expertise.
Right.
And if you can build those relationships virtually,
Yeah.
location doesn't matter as much, but what drives the high earnings in remote finance roles?
Well, you have to think about the stakes. Finance is dealing with people's money.
Right. Big money.
Yeah, it's high stakes. So expertise, a strong track record,
Yeah.
and the ability to give sound advice are incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
And clients are willing to pay a premium for that regardless of where the advisor is physically located.
So the importance of the work justifies the higher pay,
Yep.
and remote work is becoming the norm.
That's it.
Last but not least, blogwidow.com talks about project management and specifically having certifications like PMP or Agile.
Oh, yeah, project management is crucial in so many industries.
It is.
IT, construction, healthcare, marketing. You need someone to keep those projects on track. And
Right.
as teams become more distributed globally, the demand for skilled project managers who can lead remotely is just exploding.
It makes
And having those certifications, PMP, Agile, they really make a difference. They show employers you know what you're doing.
Right. It's proof of your expertise.
Exactly, especially in a remote setting where self-management and communication are key.
Right. They use the example of a project manager overseeing a large-scale software development project remotely.
Yeah,
If you can keep things on schedule and deliver results, location becomes less important.
and those certifications like PMP and Agile, they're not just pieces of paper. They
Mhm.
show you understand industry best practices
Yeah.
and that you can manage complex projects even when everyone's working remotely.
Okay, so we've identified some key industries where six-figure remote income is more common,
Mm-hmm.
but just knowing where to look isn't enough.
Right.
Blogwidow.com also outlines some strategies to actually get there.
Yeah.
So let's dive into those. The first one they mentioned is upskilling and specialization.
Yeah, in the fast-paced world of remote work, continuous learning isn't optional, it's essential.
It's how you stay ahead of the curve.
Exactly, whether it's getting certified, learning new software, or becoming an expert in a niche area,
Right.
investing in your skills pays off.
They use the example of a digital marketer who gets advanced certifications in SEO and Google Analytics.
Yeah.
By becoming more specialized,
Hmm.
they can offer more value and command higher rates.
Exactly. You position yourself as the go-to person in that area,
Right.
and that gives you leverage to negotiate better pay.
Another strategy is creating multiple income streams, which sounds like a smart way to not just earn more, but also spread the risk.
Yeah, diversification is key. Instead of relying on one employer or client, you have multiple sources of income, freelancing, online business,
Right.
passive income, like affiliate marketing, selling digital products.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. They give the example of a freelance web developer who also sells website templates and online courses.
Yeah.
So using your skills in different ways to generate extra income.
And remote work often provides the flexibility to do that.
Right. You're not tied to a strict 9-to-5 schedule.
Exactly.
The next strategy is something that some people might shy away from, but it's crucial. Negotiating remote-friendly compensation packages.
Yeah.
blogwidow.com makes it clear that working remotely shouldn't mean accepting lower pay.
Absolutely. Your skills and experience don't lose value just because you're not in an office.
Right.
Don't be afraid to negotiate based on your qualifications
Right.
and the market rate for remote roles.
They use the example of a senior data analyst who negotiates their pay based on their experience. It's about knowing your worth and asking for what you deserve.
Exactly. Remote work offers a lot of perks, but it shouldn't be an excuse to underpay skilled professionals.
And it's important to do your research and see what others in your field are making remotely.
Oh, absolutely.
Blogwidow.com also talks about freelance or contract work as a path to potentially higher earnings.
Yeah.
You set your rates, you work with multiple clients.
Right. You have a lot more control over your income potential.
Yeah.
It might be less stable than a full-time job,
Right?
but the earning potential is there if you manage your time well and price your services appropriately.
And they mention platforms like Upwork, TopTal, Fiverr, where people can find these opportunities.
Yeah.
They use the example of a freelance copywriter who builds a six-figure business by charging premium rates.
Right.
It's about building a reputation and delivering top-notch work
Exactly.
so you can justify those higher rates. Finally, blogwidow.com emphasizes building a strong personal brand, especially in competitive fields.
Yeah, your personal brand is your online reputation.
Right.
It's what people see when they search for you online.
Yeah.
And how do you build that strong personal brand?
By creating content, sharing your expertise, attending virtual events,
Right.
networking on platforms like LinkedIn.
Yeah.
It's about positioning yourself as an authority in your field.
They give the example of a career coach
Yeah.
who blogs and makes YouTube videos.
Yeah.
It's about putting yourself out there and building trust with your audience.
Exactly. And that trust translates into clients, collaborators,
Right.
and better job offers.
Now, before we wrap up, I have to mention that blogwidow.com does include a disclaimer.
Okay.
They remind us that while six-figure remote income is definitely possible, success depends on individual factors.
Absolutely. Your skills, experience, the current job market,
Right.
all these things play a role.
So there's no guarantee,
Yeah,
but the potential is there.
for sure.
So overall, what we've learned from blogwidow.com is that earning six figures remotely is a real possibility.
It's not a fantasy. It's happening for a lot of people.
Yeah.
The way we work has changed, and if you're willing to adapt, learn, and work strategically.
You can find success in this new landscape.
So as we close out this deep dive, I want you to think about this. What skills or areas of expertise do you think are going to be in high demand in the future of remote work?
Yeah.
And what steps can you take today to position yourself for success?
That's the question.
Yeah, food for thought. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Until next time.